Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
Let me ask you a question. When they were trying to decide how to have a president of these United States, were they planning on having Congress as president and making all the decisions by voting? Were they going to have multiple people as presidents all at the same time? Or one president? Believe it or not, all these options were discussed, and they were all possible. Stay tuned to find out how the president became president. Thank you for joining us tonight on Contemplating the Constitution. I'm Mark David Smith. Last time we met, I gave you my research on the last of the articles dealing with the legislative branch of the United States government in the Constitution. That last one was Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, which covered the States and Duty of Tonnage Clause, along with the States and Military Affairs Clause and the Compacts Clause. Lord, we ask that our government leaders would be God-fearing and recognize that they are accountable to you for each decision and act. This week, we start research on the executive branch of the government in the Constitution. Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution was signed in the Philadelphia Convention September 17, 1787, ratified June 21st, 1788. Portions of Article 2, Section 1 were changed by the 12th Amendment and the 25th Amendment. And now Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, which reads, "The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office or trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed as an elector." This clause is known as the vesting clause. Why is it called the vesting clause? Well, let's take a look at it. The nature of the presidency ranks among the most important of all the issues confronting the members of the Philadelphia Convention. The immediate source of Article 2 was the New York Constitution, in which the governor was elected by the people and was thus independent of the legislature. His term was 3 years, and he was indefinitely eligible for re-election. His decisions, except with regard to appointments and vetoes, were encumbered with a council. He was in charge of the militia. He posed the pardoning power, and he was charged to take care that the laws were faithfully executed. From the time the convention assembled to its closing days, there were no assurance that the executive department would not be headed by plural administrators, would not be unalterable unalterably tied to the legislature and would not be devoid of any of the powers normally associated with an executive. Debate in the Philadelphia Convention proceeded against a background of the Articles of Confederation. The framers of the state constitutions had created weak executives and strong legislatures. The Articles of Confederation, which stood as the Constitution until this new Constitution was enacted, and it vested all powers in a unicameral Congress, meaning that they have a single legislative chamber. The Virginia plan offered that selection was to be by the legislature, and the legislature body was to determine the major part of executive competency. The executive salary was to be fixed by the legislative branch and not subject to change during the term of the executive, and he was eligible for re-election. The executive power was said to be the power to execute the national laws and to enjoy the executive rights vested in Congress by the Confederation. The plan did not provide for a single or a plural executive, leaving that issue wide open. When the executive portion of the plan was originally taken up, it was immediately moved that the executive should consist of a single person. The plan demonstrated its belief in a strong executive, advocating election by the people, which would free the executive of dependence on the national legislature and on the states, proposing indefinite re-eligibility for re-election. The vote on this motion was put off until the question of method, selection, term, mode of removal, and powers had all been considered. Subsequently, the motion carried and the possibility of a strong president was made real. They finally decided not to provide for an executive council, which would participate in the executive's exercise of the veto power and also in the exercise of all his executive duties, notably appointments and treaty making. They had trouble deciding whether Congress or the general population should choose the president. Despite strong support for such a council, the convention ultimately rejected the proposal and adopted language vesting in the Senate, which gave them the Senate power to advise and consent with regard to these matters. Finally, the designation of the executive as the president of these United States was made in a tentative draft reported by what was called the Committee on Detail and accepted by the Philadelphia Convention without discussion. The same clause had provided that the president's title was to be His Excellency. And while this language was also accepted without discussion, it was subsequently omitted by what was called the Committee on Style and Arrangement, with no statement of reason and no comment in the convention. So finally, what was meant by the executive power or theory of the presidential office? The most obvious meaning of the language of the first line in Article 2, Section 1, which reads, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. These words are to confirm that the executive power is vested in a single person. But almost from the beginning, it has been contended that the words mean much more than this simple designation. Contention with regard to this language reflects the much larger debate about the nature of the presidency. Professor Woodrow Wilson noted, the president has the right in law and conscience to be as big a man as he can, and in which only his capacity will set the limit. Now, for the next part of Clause 1, which is the terms of office, which reads, he, the President of the United States, shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term. Since the delegates of the Philadelphia Convention were wary of ending up with a monarch-like ruler, there was a lively debate over how long the president should be allowed to serve. Some supported a single 7-year term with no opportunity for re-election. Some proposed other lengths, from a modest 6 years all the way to for life. Alexander Hamilton was among those who advocated for a lifelong term, thinking it would prevent the president from being too focused on re-election to make good decisions. The delegates appointed an 11-member committee on postponed matters to come up with a final solution. Under the committee's plan, the president would be elected by an electoral college, a clear compromise between letting Congress pick someone for president and leaving it entirely up to the voters to pick the president. The president would serve for 4 years and could run for re-election. That's where it stops. In early September, the exhausted delegates approved the plan. North Carolina was the only state to vote against the 4-year term. So what was to stop a president from being reelected over and over again, since they really hadn't established anything but the fact that he could be reelected? He served a 4-year term and could be reelected. Though the Constitutional Convention had agreed not to set term limits for the president, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson established the president by bowing out after just 2 terms. Most future presidents followed suit, and the ones who didn't failed to win a third term anyway. Ulysses S. Grant had taken a break after his 2nd term ended, then later campaigned for a 3rd one. He nearly won the nomination at that year's Republican National Convention, but lost it to James Garfield. Theodore Roosevelt also declined to seek a 3rd term after his 2 were over. He changed his mind a few years later. He ran as a third-party candidate for his newly established Progressive Party in 1912, but Democrat Woodrow Wilson came out on top. Things changed in the 1940s when Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt won his 3rd and then 4th presidential victory. Did you know that we had a president that actually won 4 succeeding terms of 4 years at a time as presidency? Did you know that? Between the fallout from the Great Depression and U.S. involvement in World War II, it was an especially turbulent era for the nation, which likely influenced voters to favor consistency over someone new. Some people, mostly Republicans, were uncomfortable with such a long reign. Thomas Dewey, who ran against Roosevelt in 1944, called never-ending presidential terms as the most dangerous threat to our freedom ever proposed. Roosevelt died in office just months into his 4th term, and members of Congress soon began working on an amendment to prevent this multi-term kind of political dynasty. In 1947, Congress proposed, then ratified, the 22nd Amendment, which would officially limit each U.S. president to just 2 4-year terms. The 22nd Amendment reads, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once. Sound confusing? It's a little wordy, so it actually begs the question, can a president serve for more than 8 years? You would think so, not, since it's worded more than twice, but then the other wording confuses that. The 22nd Amendment states that, as we heard, no person who has been president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once. In other words, let's just say if a vice president or another person in the line of succession ends up serving out less than 2 years of a term for someone who resigned, died, or was impeached, they can technically serve for 2 terms of their own. In that case, they will have spent 10 years as POTUS. So, yes, it does word out that way. Now, for the last part of Clause 1, which is how are the president and vice president elected? Well, let's see. You thought you elected them when you voted, didn't you? You didn't. And we have covered this in other shows that we've done, Contemplating the Constitution. If you go look at the archives and listen to the past episodes, specifically a special one on the Electoral College, we'll explain all of that in detail. I won't today. The last part of Clause 1 reads, the president and vice president are elected as follows. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So let's take a look at this. Rather than being elected directly by the people, the president is elected by members of the Electoral College, which is created by this article, Article 2, Section 1. It is not really a college, of course, as we define like a learning institution, but a group of people who are elected by the states. College, in this sense, is related to the Latin word collegium, which refers to a society of colleagues. The word college is used in the term, electoral college, is a group of people associated by a common pursuit. So then, as the word college is used in context with what the Constitution calls a number of electors, they are a group of people associated by a common pursuit who are elected by the states. Pretty simple, pretty good. Each state is entitled to the number of electors equal to the combined number of their representatives and senators in Congress. Neither members of Congress nor other federal officials may serve as electors. Each state's legislature decides how members of the Electoral College are to be selected and how they are to vote. Some states select electors as primary elections or caucuses. In most states, electors vote for the presidential candidate who won the vote in their state. The two exceptions are Maine and Nebraska, where a candidate wins one electoral vote for each congressional district that he or she wins, and two electoral votes if he or she wins the overall popular vote in the state. The creation of the Electoral College gives more power to the smaller states rather than letting the people in the most populous states control who becomes president. Additional rules were added in 1804 when Amendment 12 was adopted. The amendment creates the way a president is selected when neither candidate obtains a majority of votes in the Electoral College. There you have my research on Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1. My base research comes from a few articles found on the internet at Annenberg Classroom, which is annenbergclassroom.org, Interactive Constitution at constitutioncenter.org, Why Do Presidents Serve 4-Year Terms at mentalfloss.com. You can find the details of these references on the MessianicLambNetwork.com website. We also had one more, Merriam-Webster.com, a briefing on the college and electoral college was my last one. But you can find the details of these references on MessianicLambNetwork.com, the website. Next time we meet, I'll give you my research on Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. I'm Mark David Smith, and I'm your host for the Lamb Network original show, Contemplating the Constitution. Now, real quickly, let me explain that we are going to go into the next section of the show called Our Constitution in the News. It will be very controversial, and I'm not going to broadcast it on these YouTube and Facebook networks. If you'll go over to the website, you'll be able to watch the next one on the website, MessianicLambRadio.com. You go over there, you'll be able to, right on the homepage, watch that. Or even on YouTube, there is a black banner on there that says Our Constitution in the News. And if you click on that and go down to the comments, there are a couple of links of where to watch the next section in the next show. One thing I might remind you is that if you want to use chat, watch it on the website. Or if you don't want to use chat, watch it on the website. If you do want to use chat, we broadcast on the social media, Twitch, and you'll see the links all over there. But to use the chat, you have to register on Twitch. So I'm jumping over there right now, and hopefully I'll see you over there. So God bless. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you over on the other side.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.